My name is Maya Torres. I am 28 years old. 9 days ago, I stopped breathing at my desk at 2:17 inches the morning. By 3:45 a.m., I was in the emergency room at University of Colorado Hospital with bilateral pneumonia, septic shock, and a blood oxygen level of 71%. The attending physician told the nurse on duty that if the security guard had found me 20 minutes later, there would have been nothing to do. My mother got the call at 4 a.m. By 6:30, she and my father were at the hospital. By 9:15, they decided my sister's bachelorette weekend in Las Vegas couldn't be rescheduled. By 11:40 a.m., my entire family was boarding a Southwest flight to McCarran International. I spent 6 days in the ICU on a ventilator. Alone. Or so I thought. When the tube came out and I could finally hold a tablet without my hands shaking, the floor nurse handed me the visitor log and asked me to verify my emergency contacts. I started reading the names. There were only 2. The first was the woman who had sat with me every single shift for 6 days straight, a nurse named Diane, who signed in each morning the way you clock into a job you chose because you actually care. The second name appeared every night. Starting the night I was admitted. A man I had never heard of. He stayed between 2 and 4 hours each visit. He never asked to come into my room. According to the notes, he simply sat in the chair outside my glass door and waited. On the 4th night, he left a card at the nurse's station. Inside, a single sentence in careful handwriting. "I am so sorry I wasn't there sooner." It was not signed with a name, just 2 initials. R.H. My mother's face, when she eventually saw those initials on the visitor log, told me everything she had buried for 27 years. Every Friday at 7 p.m., my phone rings. Not because my mother wants to know how my week went. Not because she misses hearing my voice. Friday at 7 p.m. is when my mother calls to tell me what she needs. 2 Fridays before I collapsed, she said, her tone gentle the way it always is right before the number comes. "Honey, your father's truck needs the transmission replaced." The mechanic quoted $4,200. "And Daniela's photographer wants the deposit by the end of the month. That's $3,800. "Oh. And we got behind on the HOA again." I did the math while she was still talking. That was over $9,000. On top of the $1,200 I already send every month. "Mom," I said. "That's more than I make in a month after taxes." Her voice shifted. Just slightly. The way a door shifts before it closes all the way. "Maya, you don't have a mortgage. You don't have children. Your sister is getting married. She needs this photographer. You know how long she's been dreaming about this wedding." I wanted to say, I also had dreams. I had a savings account I'd been building for 3 years toward a down payment on a condo. I had student loans. I had a gym membership I felt guilty about keeping because it felt selfish to spend $42 on myself when there was always something my family needed more. But I didn't say any of that. I said, "I'll send it by Monday." She said, "Tonight would be better." After she hung up, I opened the spreadsheet I had been keeping since I was 23. 5 years of every transfer, every wire, every Venmo, every time I said yes when I meant please stop asking. I scrolled to the bottom. The total was $112,000. I sat with that number for a long time. $112,000 in 5 years. My take-home salary averaged $78,000 annually after taxes. I had been sending home close to 23% of everything I earned. I looked at the category column. Daniela's car insurance. Daniela's apartment deposit when she moved in with her boyfriend. Daniela's bridesmaid dresses for her friend's wedding, then her own engagement party, then her bridal shower. Now the wedding itself. The entries with my sister's name attached made up 84% of the total. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniela. A screenshot of a floral arrangement. Peonies and garden roses cascading out of tall gold vases. "Isn't this perfect?" she'd written. "The florist wants a deposit. $2,200. You're the maid of honor, so obviously you cover the florals. I told Mom you'd handle it." I stared at the message for a while. Then I typed, "I'll see what I can do." She sent back a string of heart emojis and a photo of herself in her wedding dress, laughing at something off camera. 3 weeks before I collapsed, My company was 3 weeks out from launching a new analytics platform that had been 2 years in development. My manager had gone on paternity leave 6 days early because his wife had the baby ahead of schedule. No one was reassigned to cover his accounts. The expectation, unspoken but understood, was that I would absorb the workload because I always did. Because I was the one who stayed late. Because I had never once said I can't. Not to my company and not to my family, and somewhere along the way, both had stopped considering that I might eventually hit a wall. I was working 16-hour days, sometimes 18. I slept on the couch in the office break room twice in 1 week because the commute home felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. I was eating vending machine crackers at 11 p.m. and calling it dinner. My doctor had flagged my blood pressure at my last checkup. "You need to slow down," she told me. "You are 28 years old, and your body is running like it belongs to someone twice your age." I told her I just had a big project coming up. She said that's what everyone says before something goes wrong. I did not slow down. On the night of February 4th, I noticed my breathing felt wrong, tight and shallow, like trying to inhale through a damp cloth. I figured it was anxiety. I had been anxious for months. I reached for my water bottle and my hand was shaking. My screen went blurry. I thought, I should call someone. I reached for my phone. I was already on the floor before I understood what was happening. The security guard found me at 2:17 a.m. When he saw me on the hallway camera, he called 911 and he stayed with me until the paramedics arrived, which I think about now more than I probably should. A stranger stayed with me. He held my hand. The hospital called my mother 4 times between 3 and 4 a.m. She answered on the 5th call. She and my father arrived at the hospital at 6:30 a.m. My sister arrived at 7, wearing airport clothes and rolling a carry-on bag because she had a flight to Las Vegas at noon that she was very clear she could not miss. I was unconscious for all of this. I know it only because Diane, my floor nurse, told me later, with the careful, measured tone of someone who had decided I needed to know but was going to make me decide what to do with it. They stayed for 51 minutes. My sister spent most of those 51 minutes in the hallway taking photos of her nails against the window light for her Instagram stories. My father stood at the foot of my bed looking at his phone. My mother spoke to the attending for 14 minutes. Then she came in, stood beside my bed for a moment, and looked at her watch. The doctor had said, "Critical, but stable. She is going to need to be monitored closely. We are managing the sepsis, but she is not out of the woods." My mother heard stable. She left at 9:15. Diane heard her in the hallway before she left. On the phone, her voice low and carefully calm. "The doctor said she's stable," my mother said. "It's not like we can do anything here. The tickets are non-refundable. Daniela needs me this weekend. She's been planning this bachelorette trip for 6 months." She paused. "Maya will understand. She always understands." My mother left me a voicemail at 9:22 a.m. I listened to it the morning I woke up, 8 days later. It was 31 seconds long. "Maya, honey, the doctor says you're going to be okay. Your father and I and Daniela have to go to Vegas for the bachelorette weekend. We already paid for the hotel and everything. I'll call the hospital to check in. You just rest and get better. You're strong. You've always been strong. We'll be back Sunday night. Love you." She said it fast. The love you at the end. The way you say something because you're supposed to say it, not because you stopped to mean it. She did not say she was scared. She did not say she wished she could stay. She said Daniela had already paid for the hotel. At 10 p.m., on the night I was admitted, a man walked through the front entrance of University of Colorado Hospital. He gave the receptionist his name and asked for my room number. She told him the floor. He took the elevator up. He walked down the hall until he found my room. He did not go in. He sat down in the chair directly outside my glass door. He stayed there for 2 hours and 40 minutes. He got up once to speak to Diane when she passed. She asked him if he was all right, if he needed anything. He said he was fine. He said he just wanted to make sure she wasn't alone. Diane asked him if he was family. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Yes." Something like that. She asked him to sign the visitor log before she finished her shift. He nodded. He printed his name slowly, deliberately, Like each letter was a decision. R. Holt. He came back the next night. And the night after that. Every night I was in the ICU. He was in that hallway chair, within sight of my door. On the third night he brought a book, a worn paperback he held open on his knee but did not appear to read. He looked up at my door every few minutes. On the fifth night, Diane was at the end of her shift when she passed his chair and saw that his eyes were wet. She asked him if he was all right. He said he was fine. He said he just needed a minute. He had never seen me awake. He did not know my voice or my laugh, or what I looked like when I wasn't hooked to 3 machines. But he came every single night, and he sat outside the glass door, and he waited. On the fourth night, he left the card at the nurse's station. I am so sorry I wasn't there sooner. R. H. On day 3, my oxygen levels dropped, and the doctors found a secondary infection that hadn't been caught in the initial scans. The treatment protocol would require an additional procedure, a bronchoscopy, and a course of IV antibiotics that would extend my stay by at least 72 hours. The billing office flagged the account for the updated cost estimate. The total had reached $67,000. They needed to reach my emergency contacts to confirm insurance coverage and authorize the extended treatment plan. Diane called my mother's cell phone 4 times over 2 days. On the third attempt, she answered. She was at the pool, Diane told me later. She could hear water and music and voices in the background. The nurse explained the situation carefully. The secondary infection, the additional procedure, the insurance authorization required. My mother asked, "Is she going to be okay?" "Yes," Diane said. "If we treat this now, yes." My mother said, "Good." She said, "Whatever you need to do, go ahead and do it." She said, "Send the bills to Maya's address in Denver. She's very responsible with money. She'll sort it out." Diane told me that she had been a nurse for 14 years. She had spoken to thousands of family members in crisis moments. She said she had learned not to judge, because grief and fear make people do things they would not otherwise do, and you never know what someone is carrying until you're standing in their shoes. But she said when she hung up the phone that night, she sat at the nurse's station for a few minutes before she could go back to work. She said, "I didn't judge her. I just felt very sad for you." On the morning of day 4, the man in the hallway chair was not in the hallway chair. Diane arrived for her shift and noticed his absence immediately because for 3 nights his presence had been the one constant. She checked the front desk log. R. Holt had signed out at 11:52 the night before, same as usual. At 2 p.m., the billing department called Diane's station with a question. There had been an incoming wire transfer to the patient account for room 418, $67,000. Full balance? Cleared. The memo field listed only, "For the patient in room 418. Please apply to full outstanding balance. Anonymous." Diane looked at the visitor log. She looked at the name that had appeared every single night. She picked up the phone and called the number the man had left at the front desk on his first night. A man answered. Deep voice. Calm. "This is Robert Holt." "Mr. Holt, this is Diane, the floor nurse at University of Colorado Hospital. I'm calling about a wire transfer we received today for a patient named Maya Torres." A pause. "Has it cleared?" "Yes, sir. I'm calling to verify your relationship to the patient for our records." Another pause, longer. "I'm her father. Our records show the patient's father is listed as David Torres." "I know," he said it quietly, with something underneath it that she couldn't name. "I know what your records show. Please apply the payment and make sure she gets the treatment she needs. I'll be there tonight." The line went dead. Diane sat at her station for a moment. Then she looked down the hallway toward room 418. She thought about the man who had sat outside that glass door for 3 nights, never going in, never asking for anything, just watching to make sure there was someone there. She thought about the voicemail my mother had left. "You're strong. You've always been strong." She thought about the empty chair beside my bed that had been empty every single morning when she came in. She said later that she had seen a lot of things in 14 years. She said she had made her peace with most of them. But she said, I had never seen someone pay $67,000 for a person and ask for nothing in return, not even acknowledgement. I opened my eyes on a Thursday. White ceiling. The mechanical exhale of the ventilator before they removed the tube. The slow, blunt pain of becoming conscious in a body that had been through something it did not entirely survive. I turned my head. There was a chair beside my bed. It was empty. On the bedside table there was a glass of water. There was a blanket folded neatly at the foot of the bed. There was a small paperback book, spine cracked and worn. Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rilke. I did not own this book. I had never read it. Inside the front cover, in careful handwriting, "To my daughter." These words helped me through the hardest years. I hope they find you at the right time. R.H. Diane came in to check my vitals. She smiled when she saw my eyes open, and it was the kind of smile that took up her whole face because it was real. I asked her where my family was. She told me they'd be back Sunday night. I stared at the ceiling. It was Thursday. I asked about the water, the blanket, the book. She told me. All of it. The visitor log, the nightly chair, the card, the wire transfer, the phone call. I asked her his name. She handed me the tablet with the visitor log pulled up. R. Holt. Every night. Starting the night, I was admitted. I typed the name into a search browser, with hands that still shook slightly from the medication. Robert Holt, Denver, Colorado. The results loaded and I read them twice to make sure I was seeing them correctly. Robert Brennan Holt, age 54, founder and managing partner of Holt Infrastructure Group, a civil engineering and construction firm. Offices in Denver, Dallas, and Phoenix. Projects across 15 states. Estimated net worth listed in a Denver Business Journal profile from 2 years ago at somewhere north of $40 million. There was a photo. A man in a hard hat at a job site, laughing at something someone off camera had said. Strong jaw, dark hair, going silver at the temples. And his eyes were the same color as mine. I had my mother's nose and my father's height, but I had always had these eyes that no one in my family could explain. Dark, gray, almost green in certain light. My mother called them unusual. My father said his grandmother had eyes like that. But his grandmother had brown eyes. I had seen the photos. I kept searching. Holt Family Foundation Scholarship recipients. I found the page and scrolled through the annual lists. Maya A. Torres, University of Denver. Maya A. Torres, University of Denver. Maya A. Torres, University of Denver. I sat there looking at my own name on the screen. The scholarship. The full-ride scholarship I had received my sophomore year, with no interview, no essay requirement, no explanation. The one that had arrived in my financial aid portal, with a brief note from the university saying it was a private foundation award. The one my mother had been oddly quiet about when I told her. "You got lucky," she'd said. "Don't let it go to your head." Lucky. I opened the front cover of the book again. I read the inscription. To my daughter. These words helped me through the hardest years. The room went blurry. I realized I was crying, and I did not try to stop. My mother arrived on Sunday evening, with a tan and a duty-free bag from the Las Vegas airport. I know because Diane was there when she came through the lobby, and told me everything, the way she had been telling me everything for 9 days, in careful, direct sentences, with the look of someone who has decided that the truth is a form of care. My mother walked to the front desk and gave my name and room number. She said she was there to check on the discharge process. The receptionist pulled up my account and said that the balance had been paid in full. My mother said, "What do you mean paid? By insurance?" The receptionist said no, a private payment. From a family member. My mother went still. The receptionist said she was not authorized to share the identity of the donor. She said the donor had requested anonymity. My mother said, "Let me see the visitor log. I want to know who's been coming here." The receptionist handed her the tablet. My mother read the name. Diane was across the lobby, and she told me she saw my mother's face change in a way that had nothing to do with surprise and everything to do with recognition. She said it was the face of someone who had been waiting for something to catch up with them for a very long time. She said the color left my mother's face so completely that Diane took a step toward her because she thought she might need to catch her. My mother steadied herself on the desk. She said the name out loud, very quietly. Robert Holt. He was in the hallway when my mother turned the corner onto my floor. He was sitting in the chair outside my room, the same chair he had occupied every night for 6 days. He had a laptop open on his knee, but he was not looking at the screen. He was looking at my door. He stood up when he heard footsteps. He saw her. She stopped walking. The hallway was quiet. The monitors beeped behind the glass doors. Somewhere down the corridor, a cart rolled past. 27 years, he said. His voice was steady, the way something is steady when it has decided not to move regardless of what comes at it. My mother opened her mouth. Closed it. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. I've spent 27 years respecting your decision. I stayed away because you asked me to, because you said it was better for her, because you said she had a family and a father and a life that didn't need to be complicated. He looked at her, and the word he used next was not anger. It was something older than anger. I believed you. He took one step forward. Our daughter was dying in this room for 6 days. The hospital called you. They told you she needed treatment. They needed authorization. They needed someone to show up. And you were in Las Vegas. My mother said, I didn't know it was that serious. You knew enough. Robert, listen to me. He shook his head. He said, I have been listening to you for 27 years. I listened when you told me she wasn't mine. I listened when you said to leave you both alone. I listened every time I watched her from a distance and told myself, you were right, that she was better off. He looked at my mother with something that was not hatred, not anymore, just a clear-eyed reckoning. I am done listening. He turned and walked toward my door. My mother stood alone in the hallway. She came in first. She looked terrible underneath the tan. Wild-eyed and shaking, the way someone looks when they have been running from something for a very long time and have just looked back and seen how close it is. Sweetheart, she said, we need to talk. I looked past her through the glass. A man stood in the hallway. Silver-shot hair. Gray eyes. My eyes. Who is that? I said. My mother sat down in the visitor chair. Maya, listen to me. This is complicated. Is he my father? She looked at her hands. Mom, is Robert Holt my biological father? The silence that followed was the kind that does not leave room for interpretation. She said, it was 1996. I was 23. We met at an engineering conference. He was young then. Nobody. Just starting his company. She paused. I loved him. I really did. But he was always working. Always traveling for projects. He was gone for months at a time and I never knew when he was coming back. And your dad, your father, David, he was there. He was steady. He had a job and a house and he wanted to marry me. So you chose him. I found out I was pregnant after Robert left for a 3-month project in Houston. I didn't know what to do. I was 23 years old and I was alone and I made a decision. You lied. She flinched. I was surviving. Her voice cracked. Do you know how hard it was? I had 6 weeks to figure out my entire life. Robert wasn't there. David was. I chose the person who was actually present. And when did Robert find out about me? She looked at the window. He came back after the Houston project. By then, I was already with your father. I told Robert I had moved on. I told him I was pregnant and that it was David's. She stopped. He didn't believe me. He pushed. So I threatened to call the police if he ever contacted me again. I told him he had no rights. I told him to leave us alone. And he did. For a while. She was quiet for a moment. When you were about 15. He reached out through a lawyer. He'd done a DNA test somehow. I don't know how. He wanted to meet you. But you said no. I said no. I told him you had a father. I told him it would destroy our family. I told him you didn't need him. She looked at me. I was protecting us. Something settled into place inside me, hard and cold and very clear. You were protecting yourself. Maya, every time you looked at me, I said, you saw him. You saw the thing you did. You saw the choice you made. And instead of dealing with it, you spent 27 years trying to make me feel small enough that I wouldn't ask questions. I paused. And when that didn't work, you just took my money. Over and over again. Because punishing me felt better than apologizing to me. That is not, Mom. I looked at her. He paid for my college. He invested in my company when I was 24 years old, before I even knew he existed. He sat outside that door every single night for 6 days. He paid $67,000 for my hospital bills and asked them not to tell me. He did all of that from the outside because you told him he wasn't allowed in. I pointed toward the glass. That man has never stopped showing up for me. And you flew to Vegas. My mother's face crumpled. Maya, please, I'm not angry, I said. And I meant it. The anger had drained out of me somewhere around day 4, when I was lying on a ventilator and realizing that the chair beside my bed had been empty every single morning. I was not angry. I was just finally clear. I want you to go home, I said. Tell Dad the truth. He deserves to know. And don't ask me for money again. Not for the wedding. Not for anything. She stood up slowly. You can't just... I already did. I turned to look at the glass door. Now go, please. She left without saying goodbye. I watched her footsteps disappear down the hallway, and then the door opened, and someone else walked in. He stopped about 8 feet from my bed, close enough for me to see his eyes clearly, far enough to give me the choice of what happened next. Neither of us said anything for a moment. The monitors kept their rhythm. The afternoon light came through the window at a low angle and made the room feel softer than it had any right to. I don't know where to start, he said. His voice was deep, and underneath the steadiness of it, there was something that had been held back for a very long time. Start with why you didn't come in, I said. The first night. You sat outside for almost 3 hours. Why didn't you come in? He looked at his hands. Because I was afraid I didn't have the right. He was quiet for a moment. 27 years. I watched you grow up from a distance. Your high school graduation. I was in the back of the auditorium. Your college graduation. I watched the live stream at my desk. When you got your first job, I found out through a contact, and I sat in my car outside your office building for an hour just to know you were real, and you were okay. He looked up. When I heard you were in this hospital, I came as fast as I could. And then I got to that glass door and I looked in and I thought, she doesn't know I exist. She might not want me here. He shook his head. I couldn't leave. But I couldn't go in. So I just stayed. The scholarship, I said. He nodded. I found out about you when you were 14. DNA test through someone I hired. I confirmed it and then I sat with it for 2 years because I didn't know what to do. When you were a sophomore in college, I created the scholarship fund. I made sure you qualified. I wanted to give you something without you having to know where it came from. He paused. I know that sounds strange. It doesn't, I said. The investment in your company. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He set it on the bed beside me. A copy of a wire transfer confirmation. $200,000 to the Series A round of the analytics firm I worked for. 2021. You joined them in January. I found out in March. I put in $200,000 not because I thought it would succeed, though it has, but because I wanted to be in the same orbit. I stared at the paper. You've been in the background of my entire adult life. He nodded. I know how that sounds. It sounds, I said slowly, like someone who was doing everything he could think of from the wrong side of a wall. I looked at him. Why didn't you fight harder? When she threatened you? When she told you to go away? Why did you let her keep you out? He was quiet for a long time. Because she said you had a father. She said you were happy. She said I would only hurt you by forcing my way in. He met my eyes. I convinced myself that the kindest thing I could do was stay away and do what I could from a distance. That I could love you without you ever knowing, and that would be enough. He stopped. I was wrong. I should have fought harder. I should have gotten lawyers and not backed down. I should have done 100 things differently. He looked at his hands. I don't have an excuse. I have a regret. We sat with that for a moment. Do you have other children? I asked. No. He shook his head. I was engaged once. She ended it when I was 38. She said I was never fully present. She was right. Some part of me was always somewhere else. Always with you, even though you didn't know I existed. Starting over with someone new after that felt dishonest. Like I was pretending I didn't already have a daughter somewhere. I absorbed this. You gave up a lot of things. He almost smiled. I built other things, the company, the foundation. I told myself that even if I couldn't be your father, I could make sure you had every opportunity. That money would never be the reason you didn't get somewhere. He paused. It wasn't enough. I know that. It will never be the same as being there. No, I said. It won't. He nodded. What happens now is up to you. I've waited 27 years. I can wait longer. I can walk out of this room and not contact you again if that's what you want. I looked at this man. This stranger who had paid for my education, funded my career, sat in a hospital hallway every night for 6 days because he thought he didn't deserve to come through the door. Then I looked at the empty hallway where my mother had walked away. At the chair beside my bed that had been empty for 6 mornings in a row, I reached out my hand. Sit down, I said. Please. He walked forward. He sat down in the chair beside my bed. He looked at me for a moment like he was making sure I was real. He said, I've imagined this moment for 27 years. I know, I said. I left the hospital on February 14th. Robert drove me home. We talked the whole way, haltingly at first, then easier. We discovered we both took our coffee black. We both had the same habit of folding down page corners in books. He laughed at something I said, and I heard my own laugh in it, the same rhythm, the same catch at the end. He heard it too. He didn't say anything. He just smiled at the road. I signed off on the analytics platform launch via video call from my couch, 2 days after I got home. It rolled out on schedule, and within the first quarter hit targets that had the company talking about a funding round. My manager came back from paternity leave, took one look at the performance numbers, and put my name in for a promotion that had technically not existed before he left. My sister's wedding was scheduled for April 12th. It did not happen. Without the $25,000 I had committed, and then very clearly uncommitted, by way of a single text message that said, I won't be contributing to the wedding. I hope you understand. The budget collapsed. The venue dropped them. The photographer kept the deposit. Her fiancé's mother made a comment at a family dinner that apparently ended with dishes being thrown. The engagement ended on a Tuesday, with a phone call that my sister described, in the voicemail she left me, as completely devastating and entirely my fault. I did not call her back. My father, David Torres, the man who had raised me, called me 3 weeks after I came home. He had found out the truth, not from my mother, from the divorce lawyer she had unexpectedly needed when he had found the texts on her phone. He was not angry. Not at me. He said, I always felt like there was something I was missing with you. Like there was a wall I couldn't get through no matter what I did. He paused. Now I understand. It wasn't you. It never was. I told him I was sorry. I told him he had been a decent father in all the ways he knew how to be. He said thank you for saying that. He said he wished me well. He was a victim of it too. I have made my peace with that. Robert and I have dinner every other Sunday now. We are learning each other slowly. He drinks his coffee black, same as me. He reads the same kinds of books I do. He asks about my work and actually listens to the answers. Follows up the next time we meet with questions about things I said 2 weeks ago. He remembered that I mentioned a project in passing and texted me the morning it launched to say he hoped it went well. He had been sitting outside the glass door of my life for 27 years. All I had to do was open it. People talk about family like it is something that simply exists, permanent and given, a structure you were born into and belong to by default. But I spent 5 years sending money to people who saw me as a resource. I spent 28 years trying to earn affection from a woman who looked at me and saw evidence of a mistake. I had a family in the technical sense. I had people who shared my last name and called on Fridays and showed up to Christmas when there was a gift waiting. And I had a man who sat in a hospital hallway chair for 6 consecutive nights because he was afraid he didn't have the right to come in. A man who paid for my education without putting his name on it, who invested in my company just to be close to something I was building, who wired $67,000 for a surgery and asked them not to tell me until I was ready. I spent a long time thinking the people who take from you are the ones who love you. They need so much from you. They must feel so much for you. I spent a long time confusing urgency with care. But real love does not present itself as an emergency. Real love does not call every Friday with a list. Real love sits outside the glass and waits, and waits, and waits, until you are ready to open the door. If you are spending your life being someone's Friday phone call, if you are the first number they dial when something needs paying but the last person they call when something goes wrong, I want you to ask yourself something. Who is sitting in the hallway chair outside your door right now? Who has been there every single night, quiet and patient, afraid to come in? And who is currently checking into a hotel in Las Vegas? The answers might be different from what you expect. Maya Torres, March 2026.